Hey, Joe Martin here. You've seen our commercials over the years, and you may be wondering, what's in it for me? Well, ITI Technical College has been selected by Forbes magazine as a top 32-year college. But even more than that, the reason we do this is you. Our tagline is, for a better life, and we mean that, for you to be able to have the life you've always dreamed about, to do the things for your family you've always dreamed about. And it can begin here, where we are dedicated to your success, because here at ITI, the reason we do it is you.
This is Sports 225 with Lee Feinswag, and I'm Lee Feinswag. We're in our 24th year, if you count Sports Monday and Sports 225, and the only way that could happen is, well, it's my show.
My best friend, Lee Feinswag, look at the Christmas.
Sports 225 is brought to you by Breck. And now, me.
New face on Sports 225, and I'm excited. Sam Spiegelman covers LSU and high school recruiting in Louisiana for TigerDetails.com, which is really a new name to me. So we'll just start out by going, where did TigerDetails.com come from? Because it's been this evolution of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's our publisher is Jimmy Details, has worked 100 years in the industry.
Wait, that's his name?
That's what we call him. Definitely not his name legally.
Oh, okay.
He decided to brand his site off of his nickname, which is, I get it.
Yeah.
And we just took it and ran with it.
Tiger Details.
All the details about the Tigers, essentially.
There you go. We, of course, will retrospect a little bit on the LSU-Alabama game and looking ahead for LSU. And I don't know anything about recruiting except that they're kids in high school. I know one name, Stingley.
Of course.
Because I'm old enough to have seen his grandfather play, and then I wrote about his dad, who played some stuff, and was a big proponent. So let's start with him. So there was Darryl Stingley, who was the grandfather, and there's Derek Stingley, Senior, who's his dad, and then there's Derek Stingley Jr., who is the football player at the Dunham School, who is pretty good.
Might be better than his entire family, which is not a statement you say lightly.
Right.
He's the #1 prospect in the country on our rival site. There's nothing he can't do. He has double-digit touchdowns on offense. People stopped throwing to him because last year, 11 games, 11 interceptions. I think in the first or second game of the year, he had 2 or 3 interceptions, including a pick six and then a game-sealing interception in their closest game against 5A Central. Even when he's not at 100%, he's still the best player on the field. He's shown that for years. I've been fortunate. The first time I saw him was at an LSU elite camp, and he was a freshman, and he got the offer, which is very Dylan Moses-esque, to be that good to get an offer that early from Coach Miles and Coach Raymond. So he's just been on an upper trajectory since.
I wrote a story about when that all happened with Dylan Moses and him getting offered. I wrote a story about him. And because that was kind of unprecedented at the time in the annals of LSU football. And then, of course, he ended up at IMG and then factored in the other day. One of the things that struck me, and I'll name drop a little bit. So when LSU played Oklahoma for the 2003 National Championship in the Super Bowl, or the Sugar Bowl, doing good so far, I was sitting with Mike Wilbon, who back then did a lot of football and college stuff when he was with the Washington Post. Now he's just strictly NBA for ESPN and whatever. But Wilbon said, this is the fastest defense I've ever seen. Because that LSU defense just closed like you could not believe. And I thought it was probably the fastest defense I had ever seen until this past Saturday night. Holy shnikey, this Alabama team closed. LSU thought, there's a hole. Oops, there it's not. There's an opening for there's not. And that was the thing, was the foot speed. And what I wanted you to do, where I was going with all this, because fans looking at me going, the hell is he talking about, is compare these recruits that we're seeing now and the young players to the foot speed I'm talking about, or make that connection. Because it's got to be.
No, this is exactly what Nick Saban looks for, what LSU is looking for. You said it right in the head. You saw a hole open, and then immediately you saw it close down because the defensive linemen were getting pushes in the trenches, and then the linebackers were right there to fill the gap. And what LSU finished with 12 net rushing yards. So shows you how good these 5-star guys are. Mac Wilson, Dylan Moses, and Dylan Moses was recruited as an athlete. 6'2", 225 pounds as a senior in high school. With 4.4 speed. I mean, the number one player in the country for how many years since he was in the 8th grade. And
at U-High, we might
at
add.
U-High first,
right.
before he transferred to IMG, which by all accounts was his way of getting out of Baton Rouge and all the pressure for his recruitment between LSU and Alabama and SC and Texas, so on and so forth. But that's what they just took an athlete with elite size and incredible speed and just said, okay, you're a linebacker now. You're a middle linebacker. And you saw it against LSU, probably better than any example. Just all you needed was that hole to open, and then it closed. And that's because of the elite athletes that Nick Saban has at middle linebacker.
What do you make out of IMG? Because that's become a phenomenon just the last few years. It's these kids go down. In case you don't know about IMG, it's an academy down in Florida where elite athletes go in all sorts of sports, not just football. But they go there, and in the particular case of football, it's pretty incredible. Yeah,
I think it actually started with soccer. My fiance used to go to soccer tournaments in Bradenton when IMG was just kind of getting its feet under it. Now it is, it's a way for kids to, one, get their academic coursework out so that they could be all mid-year enrollees at their schools of choice. And, you see guys, LSU has Grant Delpit, who's from IMG, but is originally from New Orleans East, displaced by Katrina, played high school ball at a couple schools in Houston, then went to IMG. You get acclimated to the college atmosphere really quick.
Who bankrolls IMG, though? I mean, are kids going there on scholarship? Is somebody funding them?
Hi, I'm the human dislike button. You may recognize me as the guy who enforces rules at Breck Parks. Check out my amazing presentation. Did you know? Motorized vehicles are not allowed in Breck Parks. Sales and solicitation are prohibited without permission from Breck. And my favorite rule, keep Breck Parks clean by placing all trash in trash cans. Come on, you can do this. For more information about these and other Breck rules, please visit breck.org/HDB.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out with Sam Spiegelman. He writes for TigerDetails.com, and we sit next to each other in the LSU football press box and found out the following, that, well, I knew this already, that I grew up in Stony Brook, New York, which is out on Long Island, about 45 miles east of New York City on the North Shore. Found out that Sam is from Smithtown, New York, right? It was Smithtown?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to throw in a St. James reference.
No, that'd be hard.
And it's just a few miles away. Now, I was gone long before he was ever born, but nonetheless, we got that frame of reference. And when you said tournament, see, you give away your New York roots there.
Yeah, I've gotten that a lot. I try not to even speak at my own house because my fiance loves it, and a lot of people don't catch on. So I just, every now and then it's a blip on the radar. But it's good to meet a fellow Long Islander.
When I went to, I transferred from Syracuse to Southern Illinois while I was in college, and that was the first time I hadn't lived in the Northeast. So right away, I'm talking with a bunch of us, and there was a women's basketball player I was friends with, and I said something about, when's your first tournament? And she looked at me and she goes, the hell's that? I go, what are you talking about? She goes, what's a tournament? And I go, no, she goes, it's a tournament. I got my butt chewed from this, so I've always said tournament ever since then. So,
they don't get us.
No, they don't get it. No, whatever. Sam covers LSU mostly, and then recruiting related to LSU. I mean, you recruit other people going other places. But, yeah. So since it's still fresh in our minds, and I still like the topic, 29-0 Alabama. I thought Alabama was going to win a relatively close game. That was what I thought going in. Your thoughts?
Same exact thing. I mean, I maybe over the course of the week fed into the belief that LSU could potentially win this game.
Good defense, home crowd.
Really the home crowd if things were even. And then by the time Friday came, you looked at it position group by position group, and Alabama really had an edge everywhere except the kicking game and except DBs, where LSU had a slight edge. You look at guys like Grant Delpit and Greedy and Christian Fulton compared to Alabama has Pat Surtain Jr., Savion Smith, and Deontay Thompson, and a couple of those guys would start in LSU's defense. So the more and more as the week went on, Alabama was going to win, but it wasn't going to be a blowout. I was wrong. I mean, in the trenches, they completely dominated. Tua is definitely the best college football quarterback I have ever seen up close.
Doesn't he release the ball quickly? And
Releases it quick. It's like a launch pad of an arm.
Yeah.
I think the throw to Irv Smith over Grant Delpit was that was a throw you think Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees would throw. He is a future first-round pick. I thought he played lights out. I mean, LSU got pressure in his face, and it didn't rattle him at all. The defensive backs for Alabama changed coverages, went into a zone, and that rattled the whole offensive game plan because the receivers, all the underneath routes that, Justin Jefferson and Stephon Sullivan and D. Anderson have thrived on with Joe Burrow all year, were all of a sudden that they had to adjust, and they couldn't adjust on the fly. And obviously no running game to lean on.
Is that coaching?
I would put that on the coaching. It kind of got out during media availability this week that, once they went into zone, a lot of their routes got kind of messed up. Alabama was just really great in coverage. The linebackers, those athletic former 5-stars that were also stuffing the run, laid in the flats and took away the short routes. And then you relied on that long passing game. But with Alabama, I think they got 5 sacks and pressure in Joe's face all night. There was no time to sit back and wait 5-6 seconds for those routes to unfold. So it took away everything that LSU was throwing at Alabama.
Back in the old days in the anti-drug message, it used to be speed kills, and it goes back to what I said, though, and what you're saying. I mean, if they could switch to a zone like that and take away all your routes and keep the pressure on from the defensive line. And then the shocking stat is the one you said about rushing, that LSU couldn't generate anything at all. That was really surprising. I mean, I figured Burrow would have his problems, but you
would expect. I mean, first of all, I think the offensive line play was easily its worst of the season. Mm-hmm. We use a lot of Pro Football Focus grades to analyze the game on Sundays and Mondays, and far and away, this was the worst that the offensive line has graded all year. And they've played really well at times, especially guys like Damian Lewis, Cushenberry, and Sadiq Charles at left tackle when healthy, and none of those guys really graded better than mediocre this past week, which is tough. And I think obviously the competition was tough in Alabama's defensive front. Those are future NFL players right there. But if they would have gotten Joe a couple more seconds, I think that this offense would have performed. And I think the only time they had success when they went for that field goal and then when Burrow threw the interception on the final drive of the game is when they went up tempo to keep Alabama on its toes. But I think that move to go up tempo probably should have come earlier. But at the same time, if they went up tempo and went 3 and out, that's another opportunity for Tua and company, and they probably would have scored on that one too. So it's a double-edged sword right there.
The breakdown that you guys do you do that by yourself, or do you have other people who do it, and do you watch a video together and on Sundays?
I think in theory we would have loved to watch film together on Sundays. This particular Sunday, we had Saints-Rams. A couple of those guys went. I went through the Pro Football Focus grades. I rewatched the game Sunday morning. Thank God for daylight savings time. It didn't wake up at noon. I mean, everything we saw up close, you saw even more glaring in rewatching the game film. And those grades really matched pretty organically. I mean, offensive line didn't play well. Joe Burrow didn't play well. The receivers were fine, but they weren't open because of the adjustments by the Alabama secondary. And defensively, Patrick Queen and Devin White all played well. Patrick Queen did a great job filling in for Devin White. Greedy Williams had a good game, even though he was targeted a couple of times. Grant Delpit had one of his worst performances as a starter at LSU. Basically, everything that Coach O said after the game, as harsh as some people took it, he was on. The defensive line and the offensive line got beat.
Got it. He's Sam Spiegelman. He's an encyclopedia, and I love it. We got to take this break. You can follow him at Sam Spiegs, SAMSPIEGS, on Twitter, and read his stuff at tigerdetail.com. And they're also part of the Rivals Network. And I'm Lee Feinswag, and I'm part of the Sports 225 Network, which is just this. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm the human dislike button. You may recognize me as the rules guy for Breck Parks. Sometimes the rules slip past us, so I put together this amazing presentation. Did you know? Golf practice is only allowed at designated golf facilities. Firearms, explosives, and weapons are not allowed on Breck property. Metal detecting is allowed in some parks, but go to Breck's website to learn more about this and other park rules. For more information, visit breck.org/HDB.
All right, we're back on Sports 225. Sam Spiegelman, who writes for TigerDetails.com, he covers LSU, and recruiting is just flabbergasted at what Sports 225 is behind the scenes. There are no behind the scenes. What you see is what you get. And I've had people meet me and they go, "Oh, you're just like you are on TV." I go, "Yeah, what do you? It's like we just talk about stuff, you know."
Yeah, it's very casual.
Yeah. So bounce full circle to recruiting. So LSU has, we talked about Derek Stingley Jr. coming there as if not the highest rated, one of the highest rated players in the country. Overall, top to bottom, how does recruiting stack up, not only for LSU, but as we head into February?
They're sitting on the number 7 class in the country, according to the Rivals rankings.
Does Alabama please don't tell me they're number 1.
No, they're not number 1, but they're close to it. Yeah. And, you know, by all accounts, they probably will finish at the top or close to the top. But LSU is in that same position to be right behind Alabama this year, and they're on track to, you know, for their highest ranked class and since Coach O took over the program. You know, they've done a big emphasis on offensive line already, and Coach O spoke about it in the post-game comments. They have 5 offensive line commitments, including a couple of the top guys in state, like Ray Parker from Ruston and Cardell Thomas right here at Southern Lab. They're going for a large DB haul after only taking Kelvin Joseph a year ago. They got the top linebacker in the state, top wide receiver in the state, and Trey Palmer. They got Tyrion Davis also from Southern Lab, and they're in the mix for a lot of these other elite guys that they're battling Alabama for. John Emery from Destrehan, a running back. You might remember his dad playing at Tennessee, and Devontae Lee and Ishmael Sopsher from Amite. And Ish, obviously, is the big fish in this class.
Ish is the big fish.
Ish is the big fish.
Oh.
5-star defensive tackle, Amite. It's obviously a polarizing area in the state right now in South Louisiana. But Coach O is doing all he can to break that, you know, Amite to Tuscaloosa pipeline, and he was on hand for the game. And, you know, in a 29-0 loss, I would say the reaction from all those visiting recruits was largely positive. Even though they lost, you know, they feel that they could be a part of the solution, and the environment was so electric, it resonated well with them. And Coach O's post-game comments about needing to get the best offensive and defensive linemen, as that stood out to all those visiting offensive and defensive linemen who think that he was talking about me.
Sure. Well, you know, if I'm getting to build a football team from scratch, I might have mentioned earlier how much I like speed, but I want an offensive line that's good, because the offensive line makes everything happen. You can run the ball, which means you eat clock, keep your defense off the field. Your quarterback has protection, which means it's all about the offensive line. Everything else, yes, you got to have good players at 22 positions if you want to be winning national championships. But give me a good offensive line. It all happens there.
And that's just kind of been an area where LSU is slowly improving. But, you know, under Les Miles, they got a couple of good guys. I mean, Lyle Collins, you know, for instance. But they never had real true, you know, NFL offensive tackles. They had a lot of guards that shifted out and guys like Will Clapp that could play all along the interior. What you see under Coach O is that emphasis on real offensive NFL tackles like Ray Parker. Anthony Bradford is from Michigan, but James Craig is using his Midwest ties to go out and get them. Cardell Thomas looks like probably a plug-and-play guard to kind of bulk up in the trenches. And they got some developmental guys as well, but you see that Coach O is really emphasizing it. He would love to add another elite tackle. I don't know how likely that is, but if you're an NFL team or you're a college football team, you want to build from the inside out, like you said. And Coach O, as a former defensive line coach, understands that more than anyone. He brought in 11 linemen a year ago in the 2018 class, and I'd expect a little bit less this year, but just quality guys that could be the difference.
Let me ask you this. Is there a quarterback in this class?
Yeah, Peter Parrish out of Phoenix Central City in Alabama. He splits time, and that's just a part of the system. They are the equivalent of Alabama's U-High team, where they roll 70-0 every week.
Wow.
But he camped at LSU. He's a dual threat guy.
You seen him?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dual threat guy, about 6'2", 200 or so pounds. What stands out the most, and after watching Tua, it stands out even more, the ability to throw accurately on the run is something that LSU's dual threat quarterbacks have not had in recent history. Talk about Brandon Harris struggled, Lowell Narcisse struggled in that regard. Peter Parrish looked really good. Now, he's not a full-time start. He's a starter for Phoenix Central City, but he doesn't play full, 48 minutes for his high school. I think a year in that system, and he can do all the same things that Joe Burrow does. I think he has a stronger arm, and I think he's a little bit more athletic. So it'll be interesting to see, with all those weapons they have around him, and we talk about time and time again, how he fits into that system.
This is remarkably good stuff. He knows. It's good. It's good, and it helps because if you watch the show regularly, you know that I know nothing. All that being said, we got time for one last segment, and we're going to take a quick break. He's Sam Spiegelman. He writes for TigerDetail.com. Follow him on Twitter at Sam Spiegs, SAMSPIGS on Twitter, and whatever else. There you go. I'm Lee Feinsfeld. We'll be right back.
Well. Looks like someone forgot all neighborhood Breck Parks close at dark.
You want another?
I think they'll pass. Amplified music and sound is prohibited without permission from Breck. No alcoholic beverages on Breck property. Smoking of tobacco products is not allowed. Use of fire is prohibited except in grills. Gotta remember, Breck wants you to have fun, but in the right way. For more info, go to breck.org/HDB.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, thanks to John Williams from Think JCW for directing the show. All of the air times can be found at sports225.com. When we go on Cox Sports Television, first airing there is 7 a.m. Friday, and then on Your View, which is Cox 4, at 11 a.m. Saturday, and a whole bunch of other times that I never can remember. And to watch any old show, including this one eventually, at sports225.com, we've got the Sports 225 TV YouTube channel and all the archives. Sam Spiegelman is here. He writes for TigerDetails.com, which you can read some of your stuff for free and pay for some of your stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean,
but the real good stuff you got to pay for, right?
You really want to know what Cardell Thomas is saying about the 29-0
And by the way, you mentioned
loss?
Cardell Thomas. Is it possible I covered his dad by the same name 100 years ago?
His dad's name is Carl, so
Okay.
it's not too far off.
No, I don't know. I just somehow had in there I covered a Cardell back in the day. Anyway, that's here and there.
Yeah, but our recruiting stuff, some of it'll be free, some of it is paid for. The juicy stuff you gotta fork up, but it's worth it. We have a really active message board, a lot of really great contributors, a lot of great conversations. Even after a loss to Alabama, plenty of questions, concerns from the community. Great content all the time. We got a great team. Jarrett Roser is the best in the business.
Louisiana versus all y'all, as we would say. Jarrett
Exactly.
Roser. He comes on the show occasionally. He's a trip.
He's outstanding, and he's one of the faces of our site. And Jimmy Detail drops details, for lack of a better term, and it's a great little team we got assembled over there in the Rivals Network.
Hey, speaking of going online and paying for stuff, not that any of you would, but at volleyballmag.com we have some subscription stuff for premium, but we also did a concussion series that was unbelievable early on. Concussions in volleyball, who knew? I mean,
Right.
I knew, you wouldn't know. But we had a story last week by a volleyball coach, guy's assistant coach at Oklahoma, who when he was a kid got clotheslined by a volleyball net, screwing around. And it wasn't a volleyball injury, but his subsequent brain injury and the story he wrote for us was unbelievable. So if you get bored, go to volleyballmag.com, which you should do all the time anyway to read my stuff. LSU goes to Arkansas this week, and then is home for Rice. And a lot of times there's been what we call the post-Alabama effect. That should not be in play right now, should it?
I don't think so. I think Coach O, is 7-0, and we've heard that stat line now over and over
Yeah.
again. They don't lose twice, and what's different about this year compared to years past is getting over the Alabama hangover.
That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
But this year they're number 7 in the college football playoff poll.
Right.
A couple of things happen where Oklahoma loses, or when Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship game, or when Michigan and Ohio State tussle. That opens the door for LSU to possibly sneak back in. And if not, a New Year's Six Bowl, if anyone said that LSU would be 10-2 or playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, that you would take away their bottle of whatever they were drinking. But
Don't take away mine. He's Sam Spiegelman. You can read his stuff at TigerDetail.com. Follow him on Twitter at Sam Spiegs. I'm Lee Feinswag. We got to get out of here. Thanks for watching Sports 225, and good night. Or if you're watching on one of the morning shows, good morning. Which is possible, whatever.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching, rising.